Okay, we'll start with this per tweet from Michael Benson. The final 3 Showtime boxing events reportedly could be David Benavidez versus Demetrius Andrade on pay-per-view in late November, then another pay-per-view on December 9th, rumored Floyd Mayweather exhibition, and finally a non-pay-per-view on December 16th featuring Keith Thurman and Eimantas Stanionis. Danny Garcia versus Erislandy Lara is said to be possible for that December 9th show.
The proposed Mayweather exhibition.
As you can imagine, with the official announcement of Showtime's departure from the sport of boxing, there's a lot of talk centered around that, but it should not be confused with the departure of the PBC from boxing, the departure of the PBC overall. All this means is that they're now in the market for a new broadcast partner, which, if you've been following this channel, you will have known that already, because I told you.
There's a lot of speculation when it comes to that December 9th show, what's supposed to be that Mayweather exhibition match.
This rumor indicates that Danny Garcia will be fighting Erislandy Lara for the WBA middleweight title as an undercard fight, but a separate rumor from Box Raw seems to indicate that it's not Lara he'll be fighting, it would be Keith Thurman in a rematch that no one is asking for, the exact kind of matchmaking that led Showtime to where they are now at the exit.
And don't forget that this proposed card on December 9th would be going head-to-head with the Devin Haney versus Regis Prograis fight, that pay-per-view by way of DAZN.
A time of reflection. Was there anything that Showtime could have done to stave off disaster? Showtime read up with the PBC way back there in 2018. That's the same year that they struck that deal with Fox. And like I told you in my previous video, that's important. More important than people realize.
2018. That's the year that HBO decided to leave boxing. That's the same year that Showtime decided to re-up with the PBC. And that's the same year the PBC jumped into bed with Fox.
That deal with Fox, that's a big part of how Showtime got here to the exit. What Al Heyman essentially did when he struck that deal with Fox was he divided the PBC stable in half. What were popular fighters, they're more popular fighters at the time, like Errol Spence Jr., Deontay Wilder.
They went to Fox with some others.
You ask me, what does the Fox deal have to do with Showtime leaving boxing? Well, that's content that could have went to Showtime. Those are metrics that instead of going to Showtime, ended up going to Fox. And when Fox eats, Showtime doesn't shit. I don't imagine that Stefan Espinoza was at all too pleased to see those fighters go over there.
Remember that up until that point, Deontay Wilder, he was boxing on Showtime. That's where he was boxing. And the Dominic Breazeale fight was his final fight on the platform before he decided to migrate over to Fox.
Striking that deal with Fox may have seemed beneficial for the PBC at that time, but it was not beneficial for Showtime, because that meant that they were dividing the stable in half, and fighters that could have been and should have been fighting on Showtime to bump up their numbers and their metrics, they ended up on Fox. What essentially happened is the PBC better dealed them,
weakening their content offering, and what numbers that brings in, because now some of the more popular guys like Errol and Mikey and Wilder, they were over there at Fox.
Do you remember what I told you in my previous video about this being a numbers game, and how the overall viewing figures, the numbers, they weren't up to scratch. They weren't up to scratch for a long time.
This is why.
This is at least in part why. Because Al Heyman took a portion of his fighters, some of the more popular ones, and sent them to a different network. That weakened Showtime's offering.
Just for Fox to end up leaving boxing anyway.
Showtime was more or less already in bed with the PBC before Fox. They were already in bed with them. Fox came in afterwards. Fox came in after Showtime and ended up leaving before Showtime. They saw
these numbers ain't nothing to write home about. And this isn't sustainable.
That deal with Fox that they struck in 2018, it went on for a while. All the while, Showtime's viewing figures were dropping. They were dipping.
And the Fox deal, that ended last year. The Showtime deal, that ended this one.
Al Heyman, to the detriment of Showtime and for his own best interests, he wanted 2 broadcast partners. He wanted 2 annual budgets and, in effect, spread his own stable too thin, while not making the right fights, still not making the right fights at the right time. So what you ended up with were low viewing figures on both platforms. It didn't take Fox long to make their decision.
While Showtime still slugged along.
You go back and you tell the story of Showtime Boxing's death. What happened? 2018 is a year, an important one, because that's what heralded the end, at least a part of it. And perhaps, upon HBO's departure from the sport that same year, maybe Stephen Espinoza and Al Heyman, they got laxed. Now that they didn't have HBO to compete with anymore, Top Rank had moved to ESPN, Golden Boy had moved over to DAZN.
PBC, they had not one, not just one, but two broadcast partners, a huge network in Fox and a premium cable network in Showtime. And somehow Al still managed to fuck that up.
Al Heyman jumping into bed with Fox. That weakened Showtime's numbers, weakened Showtime's content offering in terms of boxing. Because as you can imagine, if Errol would have been on Showtime and Deontay and just all those other fighters, that would have bolstered their numbers to their higher-ups, Stephen Espinoza's then bosses.
This is all about numbers. This is a numbers game. What kind of numbers are we getting from broadcasting this content?
Because if those numbers ain't up to scratch, there's no reason for us to keep spending money on it, no reason for us to keep broadcasting it. That's the way it works. I warned you for years. So part of how Showtime ended up at the door, leaving boxing, but that's only a part of it. There is Showtime's own decision-making and Stephen Espinoza's role in all of this. There is also that to be addressed. Veteran boxing scribe Keith Idek reacted to the news by saying, obviously, a very rough day for many good, hard-working people who've been at Showtime Sports for a long time. My thoughts are with the approximately 40 employees and their families who will be affected by the elimination of the department December 29th. And I don't revel in their failures or relish the opportunity to see people lose their jobs. Believe it or not, I would have preferred to see the PBC and Showtime change their business practices, roll with the punches, and adapt to the times instead of doing what they have been doing. And what they've been doing is what led them here. It's like I told you in my previous video, this has everything to do with the leadership,
the decision-making, and the numbers.
Now the story is, Al Heyman's PBC are reportedly exploring potential broadcast deals with both Amazon Prime and DAZN, as Showtime will be leaving the sport at the end of this year. It's entirely possible that they strike one deal with Amazon and another with DAZN, similar to what we saw with them and Fox and them and Showtime. It's possible that the Amazon deal could be a distribution deal of box office fights, pay-per-views, just the big ones. The two Canelo fights, maybe some Gervonta Davis fights, maybe the Spence versus Crawford rematch, that those fights could happen as part of an Amazon distribution deal.
While the other fighters might fight on DAZN. This is just me bouncing ideas around. This is all theoretical.
Because what I've heard about the Amazon deal is that it's not a similar arrangement to what they had with Fox or what they had with Showtime, what they just had. It's not Amazon giving them an annual budget, say $80 and $90 million to do shows on their platform throughout the calendar year. Everything I've heard is in reference to pay-per-views and just the big ones.
So what about the other fighters? Where do those fighters fight? On what platform? How do they get paid?
It would be less than ideal for the PBC to end up on an Amazon or a Peacock or some other platform that doesn't normally show boxing matches. It would be less than ideal because what that would herald is the continued division of the sport. The sport is far too fragmented. What the sport needs is consolidation. What would be ideal in an ideal world is for the PBC to either go to an ESPN or a DAZN, somewhere where sports fans already are, somewhere where boxing fans are already known to be. Consolidation breeds value for money
and new doors open. Cross-promotional fights, what are usually big fights that get attention.
Now, some may say, and some already are, that the Amazon platform is a much bigger platform than, say, the DAZN platform, so wouldn't it be more ideal if the PBC went there? But need I remind you that the Fox platform was bigger than DAZN. The Fox platform was bigger than DAZN, bigger than ESPN, and bigger than Showtime, and yet they still ended up leaving boxing. So it's not the size of the platform you have to look at, it's the demographic they cater to. What exactly are people there to watch? And people on Amazon Prime, they're not there for boxing matches. Boxing fans don't go to Prime to watch boxing,
But they do go to ESPN for boxing. They do go to DAZN for boxing.
boxing on Amazon would be like when you go to the mall and those people at the kiosk try to slap that lotion on you.
Hello, my friend. I give you lotion. Good price.
You may end up trying to sell a product to customers that ain't buying. They're not there for that. Whereas everybody on DAZN and everybody on ESPN, they're there for sports. They cater to the sports fan. So adding PBC to a DAZN catalog and making it that much more robust is value for money to the consumer and added eyes to the content creators. In this instance, the PBC. You need to go where the sports fans are, i.e., the boxing fans.
I mean, that was your problem before. You're showing boxing matches on a premium cable network where the vast majority of subscribers ain't even there for boxing. They're there for TV shows and dramas and movies.
The way content is consumed these days is a lot more customized and a lot more specific. People only want to pay for what they want to watch. None of the extra stuff. They're not paying any mind to that. So it's not just the size of the platform you have to look at. It's what the people normally go there for. Now, people normally go to an ESPN and a DAZN for sports. They're not there for reruns of MASH or Happy Days or Seinfeld or Friends.
They're there for sports. And that's where you want to be. You want to be where the sports fans are. You can still do pay-per-views on DAZN.
The most idealistic scenario for the PBC, now that they're in the market for a new broadcast partner, would be to go where the boxing fans already are, and they're at ESPN and or DAZN. That would be most ideal, but things are seldom ever ideal in the world of boxing, so I'm not holding my breath.
PBC Breeds Division, that's their calling card. Hell, it was one of their fighters that coined the phrase sides of the street.
Do you think they want to be on the same platforms as their competitors, as their rivals? Do you think they want that?
We'll see where they end up.
And finally, in men's heavyweight news, Eddie Hearn said this on Joshua versus Wilder. We were offered a deal that we accepted, but it fell through. It's not my fault. Now that some of the alternatives may not be anywhere near the last number, so that makes us reconsider our options. We're also in line potentially to fight for the IBF world title versus Filip Hrgovic and Otto Wallin. So I don't care about Deontay Wilder. He's in his own problems. The guy ain't fought for a year, and his last fight was about for 40 seconds. He doesn't really want to fight. I don't think.
Not fight, no. If he wanted to fight, he would have had a fight. He would have had a fight at some point this year. No, I think what Deontay wants is to cash out.
This is a guy who's in his late 30s, close to 40, hasn't boxed in 12 months. And don't give me the song and dance about Ruiz. You were going to fight Ruiz and things didn't work out with AJ. If you wanted to fight, you would have fought.
It's that simple.
Zhang's advisor had this to say about both Anthony Joshua and Eddie Hearn. He said they want nothing to do with Zhang. They're so avoiding him.
But you're the one that went to Queensbury, and you're the one that's still under contract with Queensbury.
You signed a multi-fight deal with Queensbury so you can talk about a Joshua fight? According to Terry Lane, co-manager for Zhang, Joshua nor his handlers, chiefly his promoter Eddie Hearn of Matchroom, have any interest in that fight. Eddie knows, Lane said on the YouTube channel G-Funky, put the contract in front of us, we'll sign it right this second to fight AJ. We'll sign it right this second. We could do it in China, we could do it in Saudi Arabia, we could do it in the UK. We have multiple options. The money's there. This is what we want to do. I know their side. No matter what they say publicly, they want nothing to do with this fight. They want nothing to do with Zhang Zhilei. They're so avoiding him. But listen, that's the fight we want.
Really? Because I could have swore the fight you wanted was the Tyson Fury fight, according to Zhang Zhilei, and the fight that he just had with Joe Joyce. That was a WBO interim title fight that lines him up for Usyk.
Zhang, who has 2 fights remaining with Queensbury Promotions, was previously promoted by Hearn's Matchroom, but they parted ways after Zhang dropped a disputed decision to Filip Hrgovic last August. Lane has suggested the likes of Joseph Parker and Luis Ortiz for Zhang's next fight. Hearn has indicated that Joshua could return to the ring in December. What Anthony Joshua is targeting is a fight with the winner of Otto Wallin versus Filip Hrgovic, which is down the line. That fight hasn't even been made yet.
So who's he gonna fight in December?
I really don't know. Meanwhile, Zhang is eyeing a fight with Joseph Parker or Luis Ortiz while he's signed to Queensbury. You're signed to a UK-based promotional outfit so you can fight a Cuban guy? and a New Zealander.
The New Zealander that Joe Joyce just flattened. Joe Joyce, who you just flattened.
Comes as no surprise to me that even though he's under contract with Queensberry, they're gonna struggle to get him fights. Good fights. I mean, if you end up fighting Joseph Parker, not that I think Joseph would want to fight him, that's moving backwards. You're fighting Joseph after you beat Joe. Joe beat Joseph.
And you beat Joe. You beat Joe 2 times. You're stuck between a rock and a hard place.
Whenever Queensberry Promotions' fighters are struggling to find a relevant fight, it doesn't take too long for them to start talking about matchroom fighters and matchroom guys and Eddie Hearn this and they're so scared that. It's tell them age at this point. Par for the course. But he does need to keep busy while he waits. He does need to keep busy because he is WBO interim champion. He is in line for the winner of Fury versus Usyk, whoever it is. The problem is that may end up being 2 fights, whether Fury wins or Usyk wins. So they gotta find him some kind of ham and egger, and he and Terry Lane, they need to be realistic.
The focus has to be keeping busy. The focus has to be keeping the tools sharp.
As far as what is the now defunct Deontay Wilder versus Anthony Joshua fight, the people that can understand will understand that the funding was pulled from the fight by the Saudis. Both sides agreed to the deal, both Anthony and Wilder, but the rug was swept from under them. That's not Eddie Hearn's fault. If you want to blame him...
Are you stupid or something?
Of course, they could still do it amongst themselves. They could still do it between Team Wilder and Team AJ and let Matchroom promote the show. Do it on DAZN. You could do it that way, but it wouldn't be for anywhere near the same money that it was going to be. And yes, that is an issue. It's almost like people are upset that Anthony's keeping busy and Wilder isn't, that he's already fought 2 times this calendar year and he means to fight again in a third, even if it means boxing on the undercard of Conor Benn versus Chris Eubank Jr. It's almost like they're mad that he's got options and Wilder doesn't. Well, that's just a tough titty.
I'm a boxing fan. I'm not against either of those fights, but don't take it out on those guys that you ain't got no options.
It's a you problem.